Hi, everybody. I'm Brice Hancock with Mile High Continuing Care. We're doing some videos here for Substance Abuse Prevention Month, which is the month of October. And I'm here with Sarah Zubrin, the CCO of Mile High Continuing Care, and Lindsey Chadwick from the Betty Ford Children's Program. And we're going to talk about, hi, can you hear us?
I can.
Okay, good. Thank you for joining us. Let's go ahead and just start. We're going to be here for about, 30 minutes. We're going to discuss the prevention of substance abuse. And you guys are the Betty Ford Children's Program, and Sarah and I are both personally familiar with what you guys do. But why don't you go ahead and just give the elevator pitch of what it is that you guys do?
Sure. So we work with kids, technically 6 to 13, who have been impacted by a loved one's substance use. Usually that's their parents. Sometimes, though, it's an older sibling. And we do a group for kids so that they can understand what addiction is and how people get it and how to take care of themselves. Our big messages are that it's not their fault, that it's okay to talk about their feelings and problems and secrets, and that they're not alone. That's my favorite part of the program. Kids learn that there's lots of people impacted by substance use, and there's nothing wrong with their family or themselves. They didn't cause it, those kinds of things. So it's a really great group. We also have a lot of fun. We teach kids it's their job to be a kid and have fun, and that's one thing they can control. So we make sure to incorporate a lot of fun into our groups too.
All right. So are these kids more susceptible or more likely to also, encounter substance abuse or have substance abuse in their life as a result of it being in their family?
Yeah, it's really interesting because these kiddos, we talk to them about that they're more at risk because not only do they have it in their genetics from being related to somebody that has a substance use issue, but they've also have that social piece of growing up and seeing it. And when kids grow up in a family, Claudia Black has the rules of family addiction: don't talk, don't trust, don't feel. And when kids grow up with that and they get older and then they're looking to get rid of all these feelings that they've had built up from their whole life, don't know where to go with it other than oftentimes using substances. So we see it on both sides, that the nature side of genetics and then the nurture side of growing up with it socially. So we definitely think that by kids learning about these things and learning that they're more at risk and learning ways to cope and to deal and understanding that addiction is one way to deal with it, but it's not the healthiest way. So there's other things out there at a young age is really helpful in preventing them from picking up in the future.
Right. So I have my own personal experience with that. Sarah, do you have any cool stats to add, or how much more likely a child of, an alcoholic or an addict is to repeat the cycle?
There's that huge genetic piece where we see about 40% of people with substance use disorders, parents, their children become substance users. So that says that there's a 60% chance our environment really impacts our children's future. And when we talk about prevention, the biggest prevention we can do is exactly what Betty Ford's doing, is this educational piece, because it's all rooted in this maladaptive coping skills. If I don't talk, if I don't trust, if I keep secrets, then I'm much more likely to use that coping skill. So pretty high correlation though.
All right. So I've done I had my son, Trace, who's 8, do the Betty Ford Children's Program. And I got to see it firsthand, and, the parents participate as well. Right. And so in my group, I can't drop names, obviously, and I can't even remember anyone's name, but there was one kid whose father had died from alcoholism. And then there was a bunch of kids there with their parents who had recently gotten out of treatment. Right. And then you guys take the kids and you go into another room. What do you guys do there? What kind of techniques are you using? What are you teaching them? What are you helping them with?
So we do kind of 3 different things. We do psychoeducation, where we're just teaching kids kind of what addiction is. When kids grow up in a family where addiction's a problem, it's so interesting how they're not ever talked to about it. I grew up in a family with addiction, and people would drink and things would get crazy. And the next morning, everyone would just pretend like that was normal and go off to school, and you don't talk about it. So sometimes just giving kids that language is that first part. Addiction, the way we describe it, is when someone can't stop and they use more and more. And once they have that language and kind of see what that means, kids are able to talk about it a lot differently. So we're just giving them that education to know this is what's happening, and you're not wrong, you're not crazy. This is why that person's acting that way. And then my favorite activity that we do with them is the bag of rocks, where they hold this heavy bag full of rocks and they walk around with it, and it's really heavy. It's like 45 pounds. So some of our little kids have to drag it. And we tell them that when someone has addiction, they're carrying this heavy bag of rocks, and the only way they can think to put it down is to drink or use drugs. And when they drink, the bag goes to sleep, but then that person has to pick it back up. It doesn't stay down, right? And then we talk about the only way to get better from alcohol and drugs is to open that bag up and look what's inside. And inside they find feelings, rocks that have feelings on them, secrets, and problems, addiction, abuse, what's the other one? Fighting. So kids get to see that, people are carrying around a lot of stuff. It really helps them with some empathy for their adult too. Their grown-up is not a bad person, but their grown-up is struggling with this heavy backpack and so focused on putting it down that sometimes they might do bad things and trying to get that bag to go to sleep. And kids learn, of course, that they have their own bag of feelings and secrets and problems that they need to put down too. And so how we help them put it down is to let it out and to talk about it. And then we're teaching them, how to let out feelings, drawing, writing. We do some talking exercises. We do a lot of sharing where they get to draw a picture and then share about it. We try to help kids express themselves in many different ways. We know not every kid likes to draw, not every kid likes to write, not every kid likes to talk. And just giving them that space to share in a non-judgmental place, just like adults, we're doing the same thing, just on a kid-friendly level with kid-friendly information and language. And again, we're teaching them that they're not alone, they're not bad kids, it's not their fault, and that their parents are good people, they're just trapped. And that's, as we teach the grown-ups that too, that they're not bad people just because they've had this problem and, they didn't ruin their kids are not broken. And we're trying to help that the kids learn some of that language and the parents learn that language so they can come together and communicate differently about the disease than they did before.
There's like such a stigma about, having this disease or this illness or being an alcoholic or being an addict. And I feel it as an adult. In this industry, I feel it. I felt it when I was searching for my own recovery. And I know the kids have to feel it too. And it's like a second layer of the stigma. And you guys teach them that, right? Like, your mom and your daddy is sick. It's okay. They're not bad people. You're not a bad person, right? And just laying it out like that, I think, is super impactful. And I think the bag of rocks was super impactful, for me, and I know I was watching the kids when they were doing it. You could see the lights going off in their head, and they did have fun, just doing that simple exercise, I think. And so I thought it was really great.
Yeah, that's my favorite part. The second thing that I really like that our program does, it's a little different, is we talk about asking for help. And I think it's impactful for kids that even if they have such a great example of their grown-up who's working on their recovery. And even if they don't, they have examples from other grown-ups in their lives. But when they grow up, they know, okay, I do think that maybe I have a problem. I have been experimenting with drugs and alcohol. Maybe it's getting to a different level. I know I can ask for help. I can go to AA. I can go to treatment. I can see a therapist. I can go to a doctor. They have all that information when they're 7 or 8, as opposed to trying to figure that out when they're older. There's not this stigma of asking for help, which I think is a really powerful message too, that kids just don't get. It's just say no, don't use, don't ever experiment, it's all or nothing. And that's, as we know, not helpful for kids or adults.
Right. It's not helpful for us as a society in a way, right? Substance Abuse Prevention Month, right? We need to talk about it. It needs to be out in the open. Sarah, what was your experience with the whole program?
The program was like really influential, especially at the age my kiddo went, where, you know, we're starting to get into, like, I look back, that was how old I was when I started to drink, is how old she is today. And so it's really that, wow, you're getting this like critical information at the exact time you need it. And then my experience, like with continuing care, as far as your programming, has been really helpful as well. And I wanted you to talk about what's changing with your continuing care portion of your treatment, of your program, because I'm kind of excited to see how that's morphing with COVID and the virtual stuff. And, you know, I know it's been difficult to stay engaged. And so how are you guys changing that and moving forward?
Yeah, it's, you know, just like everybody else, we had to like really pivot really quickly. So we're doing instead of our 4-day in-person group right now, we're doing a 2-day virtual group. It's 3 hours each day for kids, and then the grown-ups will have a separate group that they can join. We're working on getting that set up in a different way, but after those 2 days, and even our alumni kids, we invite all back to our continuing care. And we've been doing that 5 p.m. and 6 p.m. every Wednesday night, just doing it virtual, just like this. So the kids log on and we do a group together. We all share our sunnies and cloudies and our intros, and we just talk about a different topic each time. Our teen group is the second group, and they have a little bit more in depth. Obviously, they're a little more capable of pretty deep stuff. It's my favorite group, honestly. They really get into it and are so insightful and really get a lot out of it with each other as well. And then our kid group is just super fun. I mean, doing virtual with kids is hilarious, honestly. We'd be sitting in a group like this, and we have like one kid who's like jumping on her trampoline. So, you know, you get that. Kids just do it differently, which I love. But it's been pretty great to keep that connection with them. And we also are offering a virtual stage 2. It's a 3-hour group. We try to make it as interactive and fun with some of that same information, but it just looks a little different. But the kids adapt to it pretty well. I've been impressed with them being able to sit through the time and pay attention and not get too bored. We try to meet them where they're at too. If they're all dying, we'll cut it off early. There's no need to stress. So we try to be flexible and meet them where they're at too. But the virtual thing is going pretty well. I think it's something we'll continue even after we can get back to in-person, because what's interesting about it is we've been able to reach kids all over the U.S. So I've got kids in my group right now from Minnesota, from California, Chicago, which is so cool for us to get to expand that beyond just Colorado. And so I'm looking forward to continuing to do that after, if we ever get back to normal, you know?
Yeah. So there was when we did it, there were several families from out of state. And like my son, like I got sober when he was 1.5 years old. So I don't know if he remembers it. He didn't seem to remember it. But some of those kids were dealing with heavy stuff, right? And, you know, it's a fatal disease, right? And it's up to us as, I don't know, I'll use those language, addicts or alcoholics, to like manage this disease and keep it in remission and learn how to do that on our own, right? So the kids are dealing with heavy stuff. There's a genetic component, and there's a stigma associated with it. Do you see kids that are like showing early signs of addiction or using or drinking or experimenting with drugs or alcohol?
Yeah, sometimes. As long, like, do you mean, do we have them in our program, or is that just something we notice when they're in?
Do you notice kids? Because like Sarah just said, that, you know, her daughter's the same age as when she started experimenting with drinking. And do you get kids and they're already like experimenting?
Sometimes, yeah. We definitely have had kids that have already been experimenting with, for the most part, it's just been cannabis and alcohol, sometimes cigarettes, you know, things like that. Definitely starting at that really young age, especially, you know, a lot of kids who are dealing with some really active addiction in their home. There's obviously not a lot of supervision sometimes happening either. So kids are kind of left to their own devices and curious about it, So we definitely have had kids that we've seen, also a big thing that I think is interesting is looking at, we talk to their grown-ups sometimes like about video games, just because we're talking about substance, younger kids are probably going to start it more with a process addiction, something that they're not, I wouldn't call it addiction at their age. It depends on the kid, obviously, but, yeah, look how they're coping of like, how much are they doing that? How much social media are they doing? How much, food is a huge issue for a lot of our kids. So we see them starting to have these unhealthy coping mechanisms, these maladaptive things happening at a pretty early age, and trying to help their grown-ups see those processes of how can we, get that early intervention, prevention stuff going. We definitely see that all the time.
I had this memory recently when I started experimenting. What I would do is my grandparents lived in Rockville, which is a suburb of Washington, D.C. And we lived in the country, but we'd go visit them, and I would walk through the streets, down the street, and I'd find cigarettes, and I would rip the butt off, get the filter off, and I would smoke it to catch a to get a head rush, right? I was like 4th or 5th grade. I don't even know where I came up with the idea to do this stuff, right? Like that age. And you mentioned video games. The biggest argument I have with my 8-year-old is video games. It's screen time. It's video games. It's the iPad. And you can see it's an addiction. You can see it's hard for him to put it down.
Yeah.
His whole mood changes.
My little brother, when he was a kid, he's like 32 now, and he's been sober for 2 years. But when he was a kid, he would play video games. He would die if he knew I was saying this, but he played video games so much that he like wouldn't go to the bathroom.
Really?
Yeah. And like would like pee his pants because he's like, I have to do this. And, you can kind of see some of those personality traits. Not that every kid who has that issue is going to have an addiction. Not that everyone's addiction starts off like that as a kid, but it is interesting to look at, early coping skills and see if kids can develop healthier ones if they're starting to do some of that stuff. And it's hard because especially right now, this was in the 80s. So now I guess the 90s, but now technology and video games are so much more pervasive than they were back then. And it's, just something to think about if addiction runs in your family, especially like what are some other ways that kids are trying to put that heavy bag down instead of talking and expressing and doing it other ways.
Yeah, when I was a kid, we literally didn't have video games. That's how old I am. I was explaining it to Trace. He was shocked. What did you do? What did you do, Dad? I read a book. I don't know. I don't recall anybody ever being concerned about the amount of time I was spending reading or playing outside. But it didn't. I'm not like saying that, I turned out great because, I'm in recovery. I'm 7 years sober now, and I almost died, right? Like my son's story was supposed to be my dad died when I was 2 because he wouldn't stop drinking. But I did, and I managed to quit drinking. So I think what you guys do is really great. I think it's really important. How do people find you guys? Like, how do most kids get introduced to your program, or most families get introduced to your program?
Most families come from our relationships with, people like you all, like talking to treatment centers and professionals who can refer families into our group. It's really easy. There's no referral process. They can just call our phone number. We have now an online registration link, which is pretty cool. That started during COVID. They go to our website, but we work with all kinds of, treatment centers to get kids in our group. We work with a lot of CPS and child services. One of the cool things we do is we work with Fit Court in Jefferson County, and it's any adult with a child abuse case and a substance use problem is required to go through our group if they're of age. And that's a great program as well. So drug courts, therapists, anyone. We work with a lot of schools, school counselors. Basically, kids can come from anywhere. We don't really have any stipulations about kids. They have to be in our age range. That's about it. And the other cool thing I really love is that we are funded through the Daniels Fund so all kids could come for free. And we ask for donation if families can afford it, and if not, It's okay. They come for free. We don't want money to be an issue for kids getting help because they deserve to get help regardless of what's going on in their family.
Yeah. You guys are busy. I mean, I know you guys are busy. Every time I see you, you're like, oh, I'm busy.
Yeah, we're busy for sure, doing a lot of stuff. And it's great, though. I mean, it's a bad problem in the sense that there are kids that need us, but it's good that kids are getting to us. So it's, really it's the grown-up that has to make the decision. Kids can't come themselves. So we rely on, people like you and Sarah. You guys are thanks for being so open about your experience, because I think it's fear of the adult being like, I just want to put this problem under the rug. I didn't hurt my kids. I don't want them to know about this. And it's not a punishment for kiddos. It's such an opening, welcoming experience, we hope anyway. And we want it to be kind of eliminating that stigma for parents. But it's hard to admit that maybe addiction has affected kiddos, but we know that it has. And so we're just thankful when adults can be brave and open and vulnerable and bring their kids to a group like this.
Yeah, it's super common. Actually, like when one family member gets well, a lot of times the other family members will get well, and it can start with the kid. Part of my story is that I was in detox at Centennial Peaks, and they grabbed me out of lunch. I was a client, a patient there, and they grabbed me out of lunch, took me down to this room to see Trace and his mom. And I was married there at the time, and he was 1.5. And they took me down, and I was making small talk. Like, here I am, a late-stage alcoholic, dying, in detox, making small talk, like chatting, like everything's fine. And I went down and talked to them. While I'm chatting, making small talk, I still have this real sense that I'm going to die. So it was a very strange, headspace to be in. But I remember I was there and I was talking to them, and then the staff person came. They came in their blue suit or whatever it was, and they said, "Okay, it's time to go." And Trace thought I was going home with him, and I turned to leave, and he started to cry, and I couldn't. I was crushed. I felt so powerless because I had no freedom. I could not go, hug them, but I couldn't go home with them. And it was a real turning point for me. It was like a pivotal moment where I realized, because we all say this, I'm not hurting anybody. I'm hurting myself, leave me alone, whatever. And it hit me that I was absolutely hurting my child. And for me, it was a pivotal moment. Like, that was my last time at detox, that run, and him crying and me seeing it, the pain I was causing was pivotal for me in getting and staying sober. So
yeah, that's an amazing story. I mean, I think for a lot of grown-ups, when they, see that their kids care, and that's really the point of our group, is just for grown-ups to hear from their kiddos, like, you matter, I need you, I love you. This addiction has hurt me too, but I want you in my life. And that's when grown-ups hear that, sometimes they're shocked. I didn't think they knew. I didn't think they cared. I didn't realize how this was affecting them. And, it makes, I've heard from a lot of adults saying that's come through our group, like, wow, I feel a lot more invested in my recovery because I want to be there for my kids, and my kids love me, and they don't hate me, and they're not mad at me. It's really powerful when those secrets get blown open, because we think we know one way and we really don't.
Right. So Sarah, we're doing a family program now too. I think it's just, it's a family disease is what they say, right? And I think seeing and hearing, with a mediator, oh, my kids feel this way. That's kind of interesting. I didn't know that, or I didn't want to hear it. When we're in the disease, we're so selfish and we're just so self-centered, and it's like nothing else is getting in. And, you guys facilitate that, and it helps people heal. It helps families heal, and it stops the cycle. For me, it was like, all right, this dysfunction is going to have to stop here now with me, right? Or I know my kid's going to continue it. But there's these moments where you have this insight, and it's easy to allow that to just like go away and like don't act on it, right? But when we're able to act on it, like you can make real change in your life and in the life of your family. How was your experience, Sarah? Is like, have you noticed like things are better?
Yeah. I think once you open all the secrets, it gets better. My experience with the active addict or active alcoholic is that my kiddo's active alcoholic is still active. And so it's, through the Betty Ford program, I was able to approach it completely differently. And I think that still benefits everybody. Is okay, well, let's remove my feelings from this and focus on like how you can heal and how you can process and how you don't have to be the carrier of secrets anymore. And that shift is so instrumental. As soon as we're able to open and share secrets, then we reduce the risk of everybody having a problem, right? So like every child I have now has a lower risk of abusing substances because they know how to share secrets. And really like that, if I could sell Betty Ford Children's Program any more than I do already, that is like the key thing that you offer. And you're not going to find that anyplace else. And, you can send your kid to group therapy, you can send your kiddo to individual therapy, but at the end of the day, this service is crucial for the family healing. It's 100% a family disease, and the sooner we are able to treat it as such, the better we do, the better the outcomes long term. If you have family engagement, you're far less likely to return to active addiction. And that's the other part about your program that I really liked, before COVID, but I'm sure it will come back, is like the recovering the family portion of group, where you're like, oh my gosh, this is really a great resource for people who've gone through the program and just want to continue to stay connected. So your adult gets to continue to benefit from the program too. Long-winded answer, but there it is.
That's okay. So it's like, I know we're talking about heavy stuff, but I just want to reiterate, the program is fun. The kids had a blast. They thought it was like summer camp.
Yeah.
We went swimming, and you guys had chicken nuggets and games. We did projects, right? I know this was pre-COVID, but I'm sure you guys still do some of that stuff. And it's important. It's important for like this stuff to, substance abuse prevention. Get them now, right? Like heal now, fix it now, stop the dysfunction now, and then we won't have to help them later. We won't have to like see them later. And that's really our goal. Like we don't do this we do this because we want to help people, right? We're trying to help people. I want to see people get well and get better and not repeat this cycle. Just like I did that for myself. I don't want my son to suffer the way that I did. And I have another son now, and he'll never know me as an alcoholic, God willing. So it's possible. It's possible to like stop and get better and get well. And I think that's really all I have to say today. Do you want to add anything?
No, just thank you both so much for the work you do. And I appreciate you all being so open about your experience. And, I love the work that you all do with adults too. I've heard nothing but good things. And I just love this community that we have. This recovery community is so helpful and positive, and we're lucky to be in it. And I know that I appreciate so much everyone being willing to, talk about this stuff, because it's really easy to kind of forget about the kids sometimes. But as you all both testified today, it's really important that they have their voice being heard too, because they matter.
Yeah, agreed. Thank you. I appreciate you doing this with us. Thank you, Sarah, as well.
Thank you. And Lindsey. Good to see you again.
You too.